So welcome to this set of notes for the French and Indian War. About the notes, if something's written in green, write it down. If the entire background is green, copy down the entire slide. So some background information. As we studied during the colonial period, colonists began moving west of the Appalachian Mountains into what was called the back country. So as these English colonists moved into this land, they belonged to either Native Americans or the French. So they had a couple of choices to make friends with these natives or French or to fight, argue over the land. So France had Western claims that split the British Empire in America, um, and also there were Spanish claims and French claims, all for this land west of the Appalachian Mountains. So that leads us to the French and Indian War. Who fought in the French and Indian War? Well, there were two sides. There was the French side and the English side. So on the French side, you had Native Americans, the French army, French colonists, and local militias, versus the same for the English. So you had different Native American tribes, the English army, and you had American colonists, and you had American militias, and so those were the two sides in the French and Indian War. So if you had to define it, it was a war between France and England to see who would gain control of North America. And it actually led to a larger war between both sides called the Seven-Year War. So British claimed the East Coast, French claimed the interior of North America, what's now Canada, what's now the Great Plains, which is the Mississippi River Basin, called Louisiana, and the land in the middle between these two, on the western side of the Appalachian Mountains, was called the Ohio River Valley. Um, French and British fur traders worked with different Native American tribes in their economic adventures, taking furs from the Great Lakes region and the Ohio River Valley and what's now Canada, and sending those back into England and France and other European areas. So France and Britain also armed the tribes with European weapons. And so when France and Britain got into conflict with some of these different tribes, they were using European weapons from the other sides. In addition, control of the fur trade meant control of the transportation that was made easy by this Great Lakes area. And all of this led to money from furs, money from trade, that went back to the mother countries due to mercantilism. So it meant a great deal to the French, British kings and queens and people back home. So the land that we're looking at is this area here between Britain and France, that was not really settled by either one. So that's the Ohio River Valley, that's the Great Lakes region, and this area west of the Appalachian Mountains, which runs right in between this area of France and Britain. When did it happen? So it happened between the years of 1754 and 1763. So that's 9 years, even though it was named the 7 Years' War. And so it became a part of this larger conflict all over the world between France and Britain. How did it start? Well, in 1753, the governor of Virginia sent a colonial militia to tell the French to get off their land, that they were claiming this area in the Ohio River Valley. Virginia had claimed that land, and the French had also claimed that land. So they built a small fort near present-day Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. By the next year, French, with support from Native Americans, has seized it and called it Fort Duquesne. So the English rebuilt another small fort called Fort Necessity. French and Native American forces attacked Fort Necessity, and they forced the Virginia troops to retreat. So these troops were led by a young general named George Washington. This was his first taste of conflict, and it was not very good for the British. So he retreated, and it was a very inauspicious, unsuccessful start for who later became a very successful general in the American Revolution, George Washington. At the same time, Ben Franklin is in New York urging the colonies to unite. So this was called the Albany Plan of Union, and it was the first formal plan to unite the colonies. And it was in an effort to defeat the evil enemies, the French. So this plan, the Albany Plan of Union, was eventually rejected by colonial representatives because they didn't want colonial legislators to lose, little misspelling there, to control their own affairs. Ben Franklin's political cartoon with a snake divided up with the tagline "Join or Die" became very famous as an attempt to get the colonies to unite together in this Albany Plan of Union. Britain gets involved in 1755 and sends about 2,000 redcoats over to help the colonial militias. By 1757, even more generals are sent over. Money is borrowed to pay the troops, and this is going to be very important later on because somebody is going to have to foot this bill, and we'll talk about that later. But in 1759, French forces are falling to Britain, including the capital city of Quebec. And by 1761, Spain comes to aid the French against their common enemy, the British. But alas, it is too late, and Britain ends up winning the war. So the Treaty of Paris in 1763 ended the 7 Years' War. The British were the victors, and Britain claimed all of the lands in the Ohio River Valley west of the Appalachians, up through to the Great Lakes, and Spain was given the Louisiana River, Mississippi River Basin west of the Mississippi, including the port of New Orleans. So what are some effects of the French and Indian War? Well, obviously, France lost, so they lost their land claims in North America. British colonists began to rapidly move into these newly won western lands. However, as they moved on to Indian lands, Native Americans began to revolt against the British. So you had Pontiac's Rebellion, which is one instance, led by the Native American leader Tecumseh. And colonists, in the end, are banned from settling this area west of the Appalachian Mountains, and they are very angry. And that's going to be, again, another reason and cause of the American Revolution. One of the greatest effects of the Treaty of Paris was the Proclamation of 1763. This forbid colonists to settle west of the Appalachian Mountains. It created an invisible line, a barrier for colonists by royal decree of the king. So those are our notes for the French and Indian War. Thanks for watching.